Let's just take a couple breaths to arrive. It feels like a bit of a flurry today in getting here and just being in the world. And I'd like to ask you to be patient and spacious and let me say the invocation all by myself once through, and then we'll say it together. But maybe just hearing one voice for the invocation will help us just settle into it a little more readily, and so we're not needing to rush to do anything or get anywhere. Just tending to the heart, tending to the breath, letting ourselves arrive moment by moment. So please just listen this first time through. Towards the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. And when we say it together, see if you can add your voice to it in a nice, gentle, relaxed way like that. So we're not needing to compete with each other or not even needing to be heard. Just bringing the fullness of our hearts to this intention and this starting point in our Sufi studies today. Towards the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Amen. Let's sing a Bismillah for a bit. Bismillah, Rahman, Rahim. Bismillah, 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 Bismillah. Bismillah, I hope that you're not too surprised to know that this Sufi circle and Zikr day, afternoon, evening are focused on themes of death, and resurrection. But we're really not to the resurrection yet. And really, so much about the Sufi path is about the death. That, not the literal death, the more significant than the literal death. That, well, I'll let Murshid speak to it rather a lot. I brought about 8 pages of Murshid for you today. All right, not really. Maybe 6. But probably because in this moment in the Christian calendar, it's the resting moment. That is, it's not a moment of faith. It's not a moment of great confidence that the sun will rise again and that the beloved master will return. It's the moment of emptiness and grief and of being in surrender, in the era of absolute repose, which none of us want to choose. We think that we do. Like our biggest selves think that we do. But the rest of ourselves will fight tooth and nail. I like the tooth and nail image of fighting. Do you like it? It's just like it's such a primal way. It's not fighting with the pen. It's not fighting with the eloquent words. It's fighting tooth and nail, right? There's like, so even when all of us, I'm going to say all of us, that is, whether you have formally chosen a specific path of study and practice and engagement or initiation or teacherhood or studenthood or whatever, like regardless of what your active intentional decisions have been along that line, you're here and you could be out riding your bicycle right now. And instead you're sitting here listening to, hopefully anticipating listening to important teachings and engaging and using your energy and your very precious time in your life in this way. So there's a value. There's something that you recognize of importance here. Okay. This is from Piro Murshid Inayat Khan, from the elusive, mysterious Sufi Message, Volume 8A, which it's always written in a Roman numeral, VIIIA, so for a long time I thought it said villa. And I still read it that way on purpose, even though now I know it's 8A. This is from the Sufi teachings on the symbol of the cross. Murshid used the symbol of the cross a lot. I think someone just came in. I hope it's somebody who belongs here. Many think that this symbol has existed only from the time of Jesus. And no doubt it became better known after the time of the Master. But in fact, this symbol is an ancient one, used at different times and in all ages by the mystics. The cross shows a vertical and a horizontal line. Everything that exists has come from these 2 lines and extends vertically and horizontally. as may be seen in the leaf, which develops in length and in breadth. In its first meaning, therefore, the cross is the symbol of manifestation. It belongs also to the journey towards the spiritual ideal. And no better picture could be given of this journey than a cross. That's Rahima's spot. She's putting a chair over there for you. Hi, Olga, welcome. I'm going to do all that again because there's some shuffling around happening, and because Rahima and I were talking about the cross this morning a lot. And I said, "You're going to be so sick of hearing about the cross by the end of today." She said, "I love the cross." She said that out loud with words. All right, here it is again. The symbol of the cross. Many think that this symbol has existed only from the time of Jesus. And no doubt it became better known after the time of the Master. But in fact, this symbol is an ancient one used at different times and in all ages by the mystics. The cross shows a vertical and a horizontal line. Everything that exists has come from these two lines and extends vertically and horizontally. Just want to pause and think about that for a second. Everything that exists has come from these two lines. Yeah. If you only have one of those lines, nothing happens. There's nothing to see. There's no movement. There's no manifestation. There's no depth. Everything that exists has come from these two lines and extends vertically and horizontally, as may be seen in the leaf, which develops in length and in breadth. Can be seen in anything, but that's like the simplest example that he just starts with. Okay. In its first meaning, therefore, the cross is the symbol of manifestation. I know we don't think about it that way, do we? Like it's a symbol of death. It's first the symbol of manifestation. It belongs also to the journey towards the spiritual ideal. And no better picture could be given of this journey than a cross. Don't worry, he'll say more, which means I'll say more. All right. Are you okay for that first section? You're like, a little mind blown already, a little confused already, a little interested already? All right. Besides these symbolical meanings, the cross is a natural sign.
A what sign?
Cross.
Is a natural sign?
It is natural, yes.
Natural.
So he's saying it's symbolic, it's a symbol, that if you see a cross, it means something. And you go, what does that mean? And you can look for all the different levels of meaning just on the symbol itself. And it is also a natural sign, okay? Symbolic meanings and natural meanings. It is the nature of light to spread its rays, especially when the light is in its perfection. Don't worry, he'll say more. It'll help and not at the same time. It is the nature of light to spread its rays. Are we good with that? It is the nature of light to spread its rays, especially when the light is in its perfection. By looking at the sun, don't do it. By looking at the sun At the setting sun in particular, one finds lines forming on the sky and on the earth. All right, do you immediately see it in your mind's eye? The lines forming,
Like the
sky
rays.
and earth, especially at sunset. Yes. Yeah? First, there is one straight line. And if one watches carefully, out of that first vertical line, a horizontal line develops. Have you seen it? Like in your actual physical eye? And you see the point of light? Vertical line, horizontal line. By keen observation of light, one realizes that it is the nature of light to form a perpendicular and horizontal line. And if it is the nature of the external light to form a cross, it is also the nature of the inner light. The external light is the reflection of the inner light, and it is the nature of the inner light that is expressed in the outer light. By this, one can see that the inner light is not only manifested in the outer light, but that the outer light is the picture of the inner light. Do you like it? As within, so without. You see things as you are. You see things in the outer world as a reflection of what is on your inner world. Good? Nice, Emmeline. Emmeline put in the chat window, yes, I've seen, with 2 exclamation points. Are you okay for a little more? It goes in another direction now. He just goes in different directions, like
Like
cross. The cross, here's all of the different ways that you can think about the cross. Here's what the cross means in lots of different forms and expressions. Okay? Do you want a little more?
Please.
Yochanan was. We'll let you speak for the group. Man's journey towards spiritual progress can be pictured as a cross. Man's journey towards spiritual progress can be pictured as a cross. In the first place, man's ego, man's self, is his enemy and stands as a hindrance to his progress. It's the small s self that he's using. Man's self, man's ego, is his enemy and stands as a hindrance to his progress.
So the horizontal line is like a block,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
right?
But within oneself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. I want to hear what comes up for you when you hear that.
Kind of what you were saying with the horizontal line being the ego. Like that's where I get a little bit confused because I did think so many of his teachings are, embracing humanity, embracing this reality so that we can also embrace the vertical. And so when you do say that's a block, that's where it's confusing to me.
He didn't say embracing humanity as a block.
Yeah.
He said the ego is the block.
Yeah, I think yeah. So is the ego representative of the horizontal line?
He'll use the horizontal line as meaning different things, but in this specific instance, yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm having trouble climbing out of high school geometry class.
Okay.
But you definitely put the ego as the horizontal, for sure. And
You can see it either way. I mean, you can, whatever it is. It's like, I want to do that, but I'm not doing it.
but relationship to ego moving along the horizontal as it changes.
Sure. Yeah, and he'll talk about the symbolism of these different things, and well, you could see it this way, you could apply it in this way. In this exact instance, he's like, here's the symbol of spiritual progress, because you have a sense of a goal in mind, right? You're like, going. We have our ideal, we have what we feel is right and good, and the natural impetus of growth and movement, and then we go like, nah. Chris?
Yeah, what comes up for me is this, the self, can keep me from doing this. That's what comes up for me.
Great. Thank you. I like this as a symbol of that, Yochanan.
Ego block.
Nope.
It's easy to turn aside to the right or to the left at that horizontal line.
Ah, nice. The horizontal line represents turning away or being distracted or
It could
pulled.
represent that anyway.
Yeah, I like it. Nice.
And yes, it's happened to me.
Mm-hmm. We're really good at hearing about, reading about, receiving teachings about these things if they don't hit too close to home. We're really good at it in the conceptual theoretical. We're really good at hearing it, or at hearing it and applying it to everybody else. We're really good at that. We're very comfortable and very happy and very self-satisfied to hear the teachings and go, yeah, that doesn't apply to me. Because we're very focused on our protections and our veils and our illusions or delusions about ourselves. So when we hear these things about the spiritual journey, and we're like, yeah, sign me up. Right? Like, doesn't that sound lovely? Let's go on a spiritual journey. That'll be fun. We'll pack our knapsack full of Oreo cookies and Yoo-hoos and go for an adventure. All right, those aren't your snacks of choice. That's fine. Okay. Mandarin oranges and roasted almonds. I don't know. Whatever it is, like we're gonna go have a good time. And then it's not such a good time. Because if we're really signing up for it, we're signing up for constant ego smackdowns, right? That's no fun. That feels crappy. And we go, well, we're going to try to sign up for it on purpose so that we can do it in a way that we can be in control of, that we can mitigate, that we can manage the flow of the smackdowns and make it comfy for ourselves. That's not really how it works either. Okay, here's more. Feelings such as pride, conceit, selfishness, jealousy, envy, and contempt are all feelings which hurt others and which destroy one's own life and make it full of that misery which springs from that selfish personal feeling, the ego of man. Do you like it? It's a good list, huh? You like it?
Are we supposed to like
Sounds
it?
like the
Yeah.
7 deadly sins.
I know. We
Do we
did
have
we
to
did
like
spend
it?
some time on the 7 deadly sins recently. Feelings such as pride, conceit, selfishness, jealousy, envy, and contempt are all feelings which hurt others and which destroy one's own life and make it full of that misery which springs from that selfish personal feeling, the ego of man. There's more. Are you excited? The more egoistic, the more conceited he is, the more miserable a life he has in the world, and the more he makes the lives of others miserable. This ego, or nafs, is a natural development in man's life or heart. The more he knows of the world, the more egoistic he becomes. I love your scowl, Riaz. Thank you. The more he understands and experiences the world, the more avaricious he is. Do you love that word? Avaricious?
I don't actually. I mean, I can put it in context, but I don't know what it means.
Anyone?
Greedy.
Really is the SAT equivalent.
I know, but avaricious is so much more fun than greedy, isn't it? Isn't it just like
It has avaricious.
you know?
Maybe greedy's
And
too close to home.
syllables.
Maybe it's just too simple, I suppose. Like, I think that there's I think avaricious is more wide-ranging than greedy. Like, greedy sounds to me like it's just having lots of things, wanting lots of things. But avaricious also includes ambition, aspirations of trying to get somewhere, trying to win something. Like, there's more. It isn't just the tangible material. There's kind of a clamoring.
The tooth and nail version.
The tooth and nail version of greed. Yes, thank you, Sadiq. It sounds like that, doesn't it? All right. So part of this is like, okay, great. Natural, normal human process, right? We show up in the world. We're supposed to try to understand the world. That is absolutely essential. We are supposed to learn about the world. We are supposed to have knowledge and skills and be able to navigate life in the world. Yeah? Okay, great. Then what? Then we start grabbing onto the things of the world. Then we start feeling like that's what's really important. And for a while, we're supposed to do that. For a while, that's what's important and useful and healthy and natural and good. And then at some point, as we start to wake up, we start to overcome that and start seeing other things. Yeah, Chris?
What comes to mind right now is it's good until it isn't.
Right.
That's how it feels to me.
Yeah,
It's good until it isn't.
exactly. Yep,
Right now for me it isn't.
awesome. Yeah. And that can be a really painful and confusing moment. That I shouldn't call it a moment, like that phase, that shift. Yeah. Okay. Man's journey towards spiritual progress can be pictured as a cross. In the first place, man's ego, man's self, is his enemy and stands as a hindrance to his progress. Feelings such as pride, conceit, selfishness, jealousy, envy, and contempt are all feelings which hurt others and which destroy one's own life and make it full of that misery which springs forth from that selfish personal feeling, the ego of man. The more egoistic, the more conceited he is, the more miserable a life he has in the world, and the more he makes the lives of others miserable. We're good at seeing that in other people too. Not so good at seeing it in ourselves, but really good at seeing it in others. Yeah, Olga?
Could you describe conceit?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. The first thing that comes to mind to me is The Little Prince, where there's a conceited man on a planet. He has his very own planet. That's a conceited man. And he tips his hat so that people will applaud and celebrate him.
There it is.
Now, conceit is said to be like a self-referencing vanity of self-importance and self-congratulatory and needing the positive regard and encouragements and acknowledgments of everyone around. But it also, it has a really fundamental essence of just being really self-cherishing and self-referencing. So it isn't necessarily, I am so great, or an arrogance or a pridefulness, though those can be woven into it as well. But there's I want to call it a self-aggrandizing, but it's a distorted need for positive regard for oneself.
Internal or external?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask that. Is it's a distorted need for attention?
Can be about attention, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This ego, or nafs, is a natural development in man's life or heart. I think that's an important phrase. A natural development in one's life and heart. The more one knows, yeah.
The word nafs, I wonder if it's cognate with the Hebrew word nefesh, which is often translated soul.
It sure sounds the same, and in the way that Murshid is using it here, it's not equated to the soul.
Okay.
But it is in other places. That it's sometimes said that the nafs is the breath itself, which is also soul. And so in that way, you could say, yes. But just like you can think about the ego as a positive thing or a negative thing, that there's a positive side and a negative side, there's the healthy sense of self, the healthy understanding of one's true nature, and there's also a distorted version of that is wounded and defended and manipulative, or in whatever way obscured and scarred over. And so you can say, like, the core essence of it can be exactly the same, and the expression of it can be entirely different. So yes, no,
that.
yes, no. Yes, no.
Like most questions.
Yeah. Yeah, probably the etymological roots are the same.
Yeah. You talk about the arrogance or the need for attention. I saw in my, in a number of people, that flows from deep insecurity. I saw that in my ex-wife. I saw it in a former housemate.
Okay, what about in you?
It probably does. I try to control it, but I don't always.
Yeah. So really, with all of these things, I'm saying it's very easy to see it in others, but that's not an encouragement to pinpoint in others. That's an encouragement to pinpoint in ourselves.
Yeah.
That if we can recognize it in others, then we can go, oh, that's what that looks like. What does that look like in me? And that doesn't mean, I don't have this thing of like, anything you see that you don't like in others, it's because it's in you. Not necessarily,
Right.
but if we can go like, oh, that's one example of that. Do I do that? Are there ways that I do that? Are there ways that I try to get those needs met or express that longing or that hunger or that whatever, whether it's a need for to heal or compensate for an insecurity? That's one form of it, absolutely. And there are lots of defenses and protections. There are also a lot of just the values that we are taught through our culture, through our conditioning, that we go, this is what we've been given, and so that's where we think that our self-worth is, or that's what we think is important to do in the world, and so that's what we try to do. And then we go, well, wait a minute, is that actually my highest value? So it might be very clean and simple like that. It's all kinds of things. But so many of these things are about, what is it that we are self-referencing? What is it that we are trying to show, experience, get, feel, or avoid for our own comfort, for our own gratification? Yeah.
A useful teaching that I got was simply this: if you spot it, you got it. And that helps me because I would be in denial. Oh, this person's selfish, or this person's this is it. Well, if I spot it, then, like you said, look at how it is in me. And it always is, like 100% of the time.
Yeah, actually, I was just saying that that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I got that, but I think mostly true anyway, for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the ways that it is true are useful.
Right.
For us to be willing to see and willing to be curious about and to examine within ourselves. Yeah. And often it's things like, I bounce back to this a lot. This is a totally stupid, silly, I think the stupid, silly examples are the most useful, because I can be like, well, here's this dumb thing that I've done, or that I do, or that I used to do, that I can see now, that, and if they're really, really silly, then everybody can be like, oh yeah, I'm willing to see those stupid examples in myself. And maybe that will lead us to be able to see the more difficult things. So, all right. So, for example, there's a really, I now find this to be a really beautiful, beautiful song that is similar to a Christian hymn version that we do sometimes in a chant circle, that is, humble yourself in the sight of the mother. You gotta bend down low and humble yourself in the sight of the mother. You gotta ask her what she knows, and she will lift you up. All right, there's something similar to that we do in our Christian hymns. Now, I love that. I love that. When I first heard that I first remember hearing it, I was a super angry, rageful teenager, and I hated it. I hated it. And it was like, you could fill in, and we would fill in the blank. I just wouldn't sing it at all. But the way that it was done in some of the circles that I was in, the words would be filled in other ways. Humble yourself in the sight of the Father. Humble yourself in the sight of the wild. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. Humble yourself in the sight of whatever. But just the humble thyself, I was just like, fuck that. That was like, absolutely not. And you know what? That was absolutely right and healthy and good for me in that moment. That was absolutely essential for me in that moment. Why? I mean, I could look at all of the reasons why that was not the right medicine for me in that moment, right? And I could go like, here's the swing that I'm doing to try to find my own healthy equilibrium, right? From feeling completely powerless, completely subservient and obedient and like super hyper disciplined, right? And then it goes like, I really got to go like figure out just how powerful I can be. And I got to go and figure out just how strong and self-righteous and self-sufficient and like defended to the hilt and, whatever. And I found it, but it wasn't authentic, right? Then it's reactive. It's rebellious. It's responsive. That's not, in and of itself, that's not the goal. And that's not the healthy expression. In that moment, it is. But that's only because it's part of a process that is moving from one thing to another, to another, to another. Right? Now, in some ways, I love that song. I love all of the versions of that song that I can hear and think about now. And they feel really good to me. But the reason that they feel good to me is because I don't feel that need to defend and protect and guard against, and because fundamentally, I feel very safe and very comfortable. I feel very at ease in my own being and in my life, and that was not true before. So then it was not the right thing. Now it is. And it's in certain contexts, right? Like, then I could think there are also things where I could imagine hearing even exact same song, but from a certain personality or in a certain context that I'll be like, oh no, right? I could imagine, I'm not hearing that right now, but I can put myself in that mindset of like, well, yes, when it's appropriate, safe, good, healthy, balanced, and not when it's not. So there's an awareness around that and what is right and good in each of our moments of evolution. And we're all moving, we're all changing all the time, right?
Hope so.
I hope so too. That is true in my experience. Yeah. Okay. This time is going too fast. That's only one page. We've only done one page. Okay. You okay right now? The more one knows of the world, the more egoistic he becomes. I know, but that's true, and that's right, and that's good. We're like, I understand how the world works, so I'm going to do a really good job of navigating it. Sweet. The more he understands and experiences the world, the more avaricious he is. That's where we got to that word, right? Like, I got this figured out, I'm going to utilize it, right? Okay. It is not that man brings his faults along with him when he is born. Do you like that? It is not that man brings his faults along with him when he is born. He arrives with innocence, with the smiles of the infant, the friend of everyone who comes near him, ready to cast his loving glance on everybody, regardless of whether they are rich or poor, friend or foe, attracted by beauty in all forms, and it is that quality in the infant which attracts every soul. This shows that the same soul which comes with such purity of heart, purity of expression, beauty in every movement, develops in his nature as he grows up in the world all that is hurtful and harmful to himself and to others. Those things are acquired in the world, of the world. Okay? It is in the world that as he grows up, he creates his nafs. Not on purpose, not intentionally, but the nafs are developed. Yet, at the same time, there is in the depths of the heart that goodness, which is the divine goodness, that righteousness, which man has inherited from the Father in heaven. That doesn't go away, even when it's covered over by the confusions and entanglements and associations of the world. Okay? I think I'm going to read one more paragraph and then we'll do something else for a moment. A longing for joy and rest and peace is in him, and this shows that in man there are two aspects. There is one nature, which is in the depths of his heart, and there is another nature which has developed after his coming on earth. And then there arises a conflict, a struggle between these two natures. When the nature which belongs to the depths begins to feel that it yearns for something, it must have goodness from other people, it must have peace in life, and when it cannot find these, the inner conflict arises. Now, you like that?
I do.
Good. Man creates his own disharmony in his soul and then treats others in the same way. Therefore, he is neither satisfied with his own life, nor is he satisfied with others, because he feels that he has a complaint against them, although it is caused mostly by himself. You okay?
So far.
No.
No! Why would we be okay with anything? This cross he carries during his progress. It is the love for comforts, the satisfaction in anger and bitterness that he has to fight with first. When he has conquered these, the next trouble he has to meet is that still more subtle enemy of himself in his mind. The sensitiveness to what others say, to the opinions of others about himself. Here again, the same enemy, the nafs, takes another stand. And the crucifixion is when that nafs is fought with, until there comes an understanding that there exists no self before the vision of God. There exists no self before the vision of God. Another concept we really like in theory and do not like at all as an actual effort implementation. It is this which is the real crucifixion. Okay, so the nature of the soul is peace and joy and freedom. Are you okay with that? The nature of the soul, the pure essence of being, is peace, joy, and freedom. We come into the world and we start developing the nafs based on the information, the knowledge, and the experiences in the tangible, limited reality of life in the world. then we start thinking that we want to experience peace and joy and freedom based on things of the world. And it doesn't work. We okay with that?
Based on things of the world. What do you mean based on things of the world? Like,
We go, what is it that you think will make you happy?
yeah.
And anything that you can point to that's in the world, go like, well, that'll make me happy. And then we get it, and like, and I'm still not happy. Unless it's a kitten, then it totally works. But other than that, anything short of a kitten, nope.
Until they grow up.
Always a kitten.
Really, it doesn't matter what it is. Like right now, my current example is a kitten. I'm very happy right now. Until she falls out of a tree, and then I'm like, oh damn, and now I'm not happy because now I'm afraid, because now I'm worried, because now I have a distress, and now I have like a need to create more protection, more safety. And there's like, then there's all of that scramble.
Did she fall out of the tree? She did?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
She was scared out of it by crows, hence crows, not a fan.
Oh,
I know. Everybody always
Nice
wants to
know
know.
the story.
Yeah, you're welcome.
you have
So-
to go to the circle to find that out, right?
Right. Or send me an email saying, what do you have against crows? One person did that. And I'm
That's
like,
a little more off the wall. What's up with that?
yeah. All right, so first, he's saying, Murshid is saying, the first thing is to overcome that need to acquire and attain and experience our happiness, our joy, our peace, our contentment through things in the world. Like, that's not it. Okay, at least theoretically, we're okay with that. Like, got it. The next thing is not to let the ego be damaged by other people's opinions or expectations or judgments or preferences.
So I was fascinated by a statement a while ago. We learn to, what did you say? You know, we're born and we're pure and whatever, and then we're like this, right? Everything you're talking about, all that long list,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, well, why is that? Why does it have to be that way? Well, probably in indigenous communities, it's not like that. In the Amazon or maybe with Native Americans, like I guess my question is, isn't it like the culture and our families and education and the whole culture that like we just move along, like it's a big wave and we just go along with the wave, because it doesn't have to be like that. That's my question.
Whether it has to be like that?
Yeah, because that's the way it sounded, like we just become like this. Well, in indigenous communities, I don't think that's the case.
The cultural context and the details around it will be different, but the essence of it will be the same.
So then human nature just takes us to that. In that
You know, I could apply this also to, life includes struggle. And a really, like, fundamentally most powerful priority, need, value of self-preservation. That is, it's so fundamental throughout nature, not just human beings. So it isn't just this culture. It isn't just the culture that you were raised in. Like, each of us has our own specific details around it, and the story that unfolds, and the expressions and manifestations or womanifestations of whatever it is that, like, what are your particular issues or your particular sensitivities or your particular longings or appetites or passions or aversions, or, and they're unique to each person. even in a shared culture where we could have grown up in the same neighborhood, but we're going to have different things. Even in my family, my siblings and I are very different from each other. Some things very similar, but there's definitely a unique individual personality and set of interests and longings that are unique to each person. And it isn't just, Mershid talks about it in the context of human beings. And it's good to remember also that he came from a very Eastern culture in India, that's where he was born and raised. And then he came here and traveled widely in Europe and Russia, and he was teaching and meeting people according to the culture, and he's studying the society that he's moving in and the people that he's interacting with, so he can address things in this specific language and form that is useful for them. And they weren't all of the values that he grew up with. They weren't all of the cultural conditions and expressions that he grew up with. And yeah, that's probably enough of that. Yeah. Okay, so there will be several phases of this, as Mershid describes it. Like, what are the first things that we notice in our efforts to overcome the nafs? In our efforts to understand how we restrict and thwart our own progress? What are the things that we do? What are the things that confuse us or that pull us in different directions? And mostly we don't consider those things in our everyday normal life. That we don't have to, but in order to address those things really skillfully and effectively, it requires us to pay particular attention to them, to work with them directly. Some of those things happen naturally. That shift that you were describing, Chris, of when things start to go like, well, I thought that this was the way. I was moving in this direction with these values, with these expectations. And now I'm like, that's not where it's at. That happens by itself. That's a natural part of the process of life, of development. That in general, we don't get to choose what that pivot is for us. But that does happen naturally. And then in the Sufi context, we have so many instructions and invitations to shape ourselves intentionally, to notice the ways that we might be experiencing conceit, envy, pridefulness, greed, avariciousness, avaricity. What do you think it is? Whatever it is. That we get to watch those things and try to manage them intentionally.
What was the part where he said, like, we reach a new stage, like, once we're more aware of, like, okay, I'm not going to be just a complete asshole to people or whatever it is, the avaricious, or then we get this level of, like, too much sensitivity or something like that? Because I feel like that's an important piece to be aware of too, like, that's the ego as well. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'd like to hear that again.
A longing for joy and peace and rest is in him. This shows that there are two aspects. The one nature is the depth of the heart, and the other is developed after coming to earth. That's the nafs. And there arises a conflict, a struggle between these two natures. When the nature which belongs to the depths begins to feel that it yearns for something, it must have goodness from other people. It must have peace in life. And when it cannot find these, the inner conflict arises. Man creates his own disharmony in his soul and then treats others in the same way. Therefore, he is neither satisfied with his own life, nor is he satisfied with others, because he feels that he has a complaint against them, although it is caused mostly by himself. This cross he carries during his progress is what Mershid calls the ugly passions, the love of comforts, the satisfaction in anger and bitterness that he has to fight first. And when he has conquered these, the next trouble he has to meet is that still more subtle enemy of himself in his mind, the sensitiveness to what others say, to the opinion of others about himself. Here again, the same enemy, the nafs, takes another stand, and the crucifixion is when that nafs is fought with, until there comes an understanding that there exists no self before the vision of God. Is that what you were thinking about? Here's a short summary. This is actually from one of Mershid's aphorisms. The real meaning of crucifixion is to crucify the false self, that the true self may rise. As long as the false self is not crucified, the true self is not realized. Here's that again. You ready? The real meaning of crucifixion is to crucify the false self, that the true self may rise. As long as the false self is not crucified, the true self is not realized. So then the question is, how do you discover the true self? And even catching a glimpse of the true self gives you the courage and the impetus to crucify the false self. If you don't have a glimpse of the true self, you have no reason to let go of the loyalty to the false self. Right?
How do you crucify the ego, the false self?
First, it's such a good question. But it's 3 steps too far.
Okay.
Because first you have to really authentically want to.
Right.
That's the hard part, is getting to the point where you actually want to. Where you actually realize that the clinging to and the fortifying of the false self, which is what we spend our entire lives doing, when we realize that that is actually not going to help us progress, that is actually not going to contribute to our great happiness and peace and fulfillment. But as long as we're confused in that, we're not really authentically motivated to get over it. Fortunately, I know that all sounds so tragic. Fortunately, on the Sufi path, the motivation, the impetus, the inspiration, the reminders and the glimpses of the true self come in such beautiful forms. On the Sufi path, we're motivated and inspired and encouraged in the directions of overcoming, crucifying the false self by cultivating love, by experiencing beauty, Yay.
Why isn't love included with peace, joy, and freedom?
Is it not?
I don't hear it in there. Those seem to be separate to me.
I love your question, Bill.
It permeates all, but to me that comes before the other three.
Yeah. Was it here? It wasn't here. A couple of you are going to be bored because you just heard me talk about this at a recent retreat. No, it's so good. Here's the thing. God is so all-pervading that we don't notice her. Right? You don't have to agree with that. I'm just saying that as a starting point. Like, okay. When we first start to try to identify what is God's nature, the first of the beautiful names of God is Irachman, love. It said mercy and compassion, but those are expressions of love. They're nuances, they're forms of love. Okay. Irachman, also not identifiable. It is still the all-pervading. It is still like so omnipresent that we don't notice it. That it doesn't have an activity. It is the nature of everything, but it doesn't have an expression. And it doesn't start taking an expression until Irachim, which is the second of the beautiful names of God. First, there's the all-pervading nature. Then there's a defining characteristic, but we can't experience it yet. Then it starts to take form. This is why the beautiful names of God are mapped out in this way. Now, we do have peace is one of the beautiful names of God, but it doesn't get there until the fifth one. Fifth is peace. But it builds, like each of these things builds on the previous ones that we go like, and then what, and then what, and then what? And we don't actually get to perceive it until further down the line, when it starts to take specific shapes that we can recognize in our humanness. So, and even peace in that form of salam, that is the first of the expressions of peace, it said that because that is the nature of existence, we don't notice that either. But we constantly long to return to it. And the reason that we long for it so desperately is because on some level our souls recognize it as ourselves. So there's a quality about it that we understand to be home. We don't get to a name of God that means joy until even further down, and not one that means freedom until even further down, like along the line of expression.
Further
It's not
in,
hierarchical,
further
but yeah. So we're very good in our human context, we're very good at saying, what is it that you really want? What are your highest values and your deepest longings? And would we even say peace? I don't know, maybe. Would we say happiness? Probably. And even with any of the things that we could identify as what are our highest longings, our greatest values, what is it that's most important to us, or that we're the most desperate for? even with those qualities, any of them that you could describe, that you could say, this is the thing, you say, well, what does that mean? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And we would have to use so many words and so many examples to try to explain what that is. But we have an immediate felt sense of it. And all of these things are related, that we can go, is joy the same as peace? Yes. And no. Yes. And no. Like, essentially, it's the same thing, but it might feel like or look like or have a different color or a different fragrance about it. But at the essence of it, it's the same thing. Is that the same as freedom? Is peace the same as freedom? Yes. No. Yes. Right? Same essence, different expressions. We haven't done enough singing today. We should sing something.
We will.
Okay. I think we should do a version of This Is Not My Body, This Is the Temple of God, along with the La ilaha and illallahu. Let's see if I can remember one of these. There's so many of them. Okay. All of these things about the cross, crucifixion, overcoming the self, they're all pointing toward the zikr. That is, and then what? Well, and then God, right? And then what? Well, and then everything. Overcoming the false self so the real self can rise, right? It's not so that there's nothing. It's not so that we're all empty and desperate and miserable. No, it's so that then we experience what is naturally, essentially, the divine expression within us, as us, in the world, in life, in this moment, in every moment. So this is what Murshid called the zikr, but with English words. So, this is not my body. We'll say that 3 times because we really have to get over that. And then, this is the temple of God. And then, this is not my heart. And we'll say that 3 times because we really need to get over that. Like, it's not mine. I just have the great delight and the great miraculous privilege of experiencing her for a while. It's the altar of God. This is not my body. This is not my body. This is not my body. This is the temple of God. This is not my body. This is not my body. This is not my body. This is the temple of God. This is not my heart. This is not my heart. This is not my heart. This is the altar of God. This is not my heart. This is not my heart. This is not my heart. This is the altar of God. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Sorry, we'll see if this is better. Feels a little low for me today. This is not my body. That's better. This is not my body. This is not my body. This is the temple of God. This is not my body. This is not my body. This is not my body. to tell you something really lovely from this morning that might be a little bit terrible. Are you ready?
Yes.
I think you know, most of you know, that Rahima and I went to tour a facility yesterday that is a natural funeral body transformation place. Super cool. I think this is super cool. I know I'm weird. It's okay. I'm all right with that. One of the things, I mean, there are so many interesting things about it. For many years now, I have had it in writing, documented, that when I am done with this body, I think the most ideal way of dealing with this body when I'm no longer in it is to put her into a fire until there's nothing left. And then my kids, I hope my kids are still alive when I'm gone, can do whatever they want with what's left. That's been my plan. It's in writing. I'm looking at other options now because there's some cool options. I think there are cool options available now. Now, I've never done this before. I've always thought about it like, what would be the least disturbing for my children? That's been my thought about it. When I think about other options, when I go, well, I think water cremation is super cool. I just think that's such an interesting and like lovely in many ways. And I imagine my kids being kind of freaked out about that. I imagine that being a creepy thing for them to imagine happening to their mother's body. So I actually asked my kids about it. Like, would that be really distressing for you if I said that that's what I wanted done with my body? So that's been the extent of my thinking about it. I just want you to consider this possibility. Maybe you want to try this on right now for yourself, maybe not. But this morning, for the first time, I asked my body what she wanted. I didn't spend a lot of time with it. It was just like part of a conversation. But I actually physically looked down at my body and went, hello, body. Thank you so much for being my body. Thank you so much for all of the ways that you support and enable me to be present in this amazing life experience in this world. How magical is that? How phenomenal is that? Thank you, body. And when I'm no longer here, occupying this form, when this is no longer an animate, self-sufficiently living being, how would you like to finish your journey here? She didn't give me an answer yet, but I plan to spend more time with this. That is, this physical body has her own voice and preferences. I know that, right? Like, I know, like, the idea of not being an animate object anymore in the world doesn't feel like a very fun or enjoyable prospect. And when that's true, what would be your preferred way to complete this? I encourage you to try that. It feels really nice to me. It feels like a really nice way of honoring this physical body made of all of these elements of the world, of manifest existence. In my case, it's a womanifest existence that is like all of these elements that are here and that are going to go back into some other form. All right. The other thing, because Bill brought this egg. So, can I touch it? Bill brought this.
You should ask the egg, actually.
I think I did, and I think she said yes. So this is the egg that Bill brought today. It's a candle, and I think that it's in honor of Easter, probably. So one of the things that we got to see yesterday which I think is very cool, is the water cremation vessel that is just like, it looks like a big freezer box, kind of, like a just stainless steel box. Now, and the director, owner of this particular facility opened it up so we could like see what it, and show us how it works, and described all of the stuff that they do, which I think is very interesting. And I, because I'm a little bit ridiculous, asked a question about whether you could, because some of the chemicals smell like vinegar. It's like a super concentrated vinegar, so you could smell a little bit of vinegar. And it reminded me of dyeing Easter eggs. So I asked if it was possible to put colored dyes in there with the body while it's being dissolved, so that whatever was left of it would be colored. That would be whatever color you want. And then, which he said nobody's ever asked that, but it's probably possible, and he's going to look into it because he's very accommodating like that. Now, one of the things that I was thinking also is that maybe you could put colored dyes in with other forms of cremains, and in particular, the ones that end up with like ashes, that is like white powder. It's not really ashes, mostly it's bone, but that you could dye it, and then you could, theoretically, I haven't seen this happen, but I believe it's possible, you could dye it, and then you could compress it into an egg like this and make it into sidewalk chalk. Then you could go and draw mandalas on, I don't know, like cliff faces, on rocks, on sidewalks, on trails, on streets, and then it would wash away with the rain or whatever the natural elements. And wouldn't that be brilliant? So now I have a new aspiration for my end of life. And Emmeline sent me a message earlier. I'll let you see it. If you want to put it in the chat window, you can. But so new creative inspirations, end of life planning. All right. Thank you, Bill, for bringing the visual aid for today. Visual egg for today. All right, I wasn't going to talk about any of those things today. Here's a little more Murshid. The real crucifixion. Okay, so the last bit was no self before the vision of God. Oh, Khadijah Noor left. It is this which is the real crucifixion, but with it there comes still another. There's still another, which always follows, and which every soul has to experience, for the perfection and liberation of every soul depend on it. You ready? The one that every soul must experience, the perfection and liberation of every soul depends on this. The crucifixion of that part of a man's being which he has created in himself and which is not his real self, although on the way it always appears that he has crucified his own self. The mystery of perfection lies in annihilation, not annihilation of the real self, but of the false self, of the false conception, which man has always cherished in his heart and has been allowed to torture him during his life. I know. The crucifixion of that part of man's being which he has created in himself and which is not his real self, although on the way it always appears that he has crucified his own self. Are we okay with that now, so far? The mystery of perfection lies in annihilation, not annihilation of the real self, but of the false self, of the false conception which man has always cherished in his heart and which has been allowed to torture him during his life. The teaching of Christ, I love when Murshid does teachings of Christ.
Me too.
The teaching of Christ, when he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," is little understood. He does not mean poor in divine spirit, but poor in this self-created spirit. Those who are poor in this self-created spirit are rich in the divine spirit. Did you get that? Those who are poor in self-created spirit are rich in the divine spirit. Therefore, one can call the nafs are the spirit of grossness. He doesn't mean disgustingness, he means coarseness. One can call the nafs the spirit of grossness, but a better word is ego. Same thing. There's a little bit more. Are you okay for it? The next and still greater mystery of the cross can be observed in the life of the messengers, the prophets, the holy beings. In the first place, no one has entrance into the kingdom of God who has not been so crucified. It is this selflessness. I see your scowl, Riaz. Do you want me to go back to something? No. Okay. It is this selflessness to the extent that even the thought of self is no longer there, which is the recognition of God. Selflessness to the point where you cannot even recognize the small s self anymore is the recognition of God. Hey, guess what, Bill? Love accomplishes this work. Love accomplishes this work when it spreads its wings and veils man's self from his own eyes. Yep. Love accomplishes this work when it spreads its wings and veils man's self from his own eyes. When you're no longer seeing your own self because of love. That is the moment when love is fulfilled. And so it is in the life of the holy ones who have not only loved God by professing it or showing it, but to the extent that they have forgotten themselves. It is that state of realization of being which can be called a cross. Like it? Still like a cross?
Yes. I did, when I said that, I said I like the symbol of the cross, because saying I like the cross sounds a little,
Okay.
but yes.
There's a line in the prayer psalm that I'd like to spend a little time with, which is, raise us from the denseness of the earth. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. And if you're willing, I invite you to just breathe that phrase in and out. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit, but We'll keep coming back to that phrase and breathing. Breathing in, raise us from the denseness of the earth. Breathing out, raise us from the denseness of the earth. And continue to hold that on the breath, or to carry that on the breath. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. That is a request to be lifted from our struggles and our pains. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. That is asking to be brought up to a higher vision, where we realize our true selves, our true nature. Raise us from the denseness of the earth, where we can still feel the fullness of our human experience, life in the here and now, tangible and beautiful, and also raise us from the denseness of the earth to be invited into the feelings of freedom, freedom from confusion. Raise us from the denseness of the earth, freedom from distress, freedom from the false self. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. Freedom from feeling entangled in that veil that keeps us from perceiving our own divinity and the living reality of God. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. Asking for our sight to be filled with the light, with beauty. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. Asking to feel ourselves surrounded by an atmosphere of peace and contentment and ease. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. To be able to see through the obscurations, the confusions of the nafs. Raise us from the denseness of the earth, to be unburdened, to release the strands, the attachments, the limitations. Couple more breaths. Raise us from the denseness of the earth. I'd like to close our afternoon with the prayer Rasul that in these lovely books. It's in the middle section, the stapled section. And let me see if I can find it quickly to put it in the chat window for you. And if you prefer not to say it, but just to listen to it and see how it feels in your heart, that's fine too. And this, of the six, like the major prayers that Murshid gave as the morning, midday, and evening prayers, Rasul is the last one that I took on as my own practice and integrated. And it had the trickiest language for me. It had though by the time I got to it and I was like, okay, I'm done letting tricky language keep me from things. And and by the time I got to it, I was like, oh, it's not so tricky. Like, but I remember, like, the first time I read it, I was immediately like, this language is definitely not for me. Which I've done with a lot of Murshid's prayers, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And so with my awareness of my own process with that, it's an invitation and an acknowledgement and an encouragement to be patient and respectful of your own process of whatever is true for you is just fine. And when there are things that feel uncomfortable about the language, to be willing to notice what's there and to see if you're willing to just be curious about it. And you can still have whatever your responses are to it and your preferences and thoughts and feelings about it. And then just seeing if you're willing to, like, what is there? What is this actually saying? And what is it doing within me that I can be interested in and see if I can bring a light of understanding and spaciousness eventually. So you're welcome to say it with me or just notice what happens for you in it. Warner of coming dangers, wakener of the world from sleep, deliverer of the message of God. Thou art our Savior, the sun at the dawn of creation, the light of the whole universe, the fulfillment of God's purpose. Thou, the life eternal, we seek refuge in thy loving enfoldment. Spirit of guidance, source of all beauty, and creator of harmony, love, lover, and beloved Lord, thou art our divine